Turns out the detour had detours. If you read my last piece, didn't invite fear into my plans, but it found me anyway. You already know that fear was showing up loud and uninvited, but what I didn't share was everything that actually happened to get me to that hostel book exchange moment, and then everything that happened after, where I encountered fear, self-doubt, and worry time and time again as the plan kept changing due to circumstances out of my control, and how I responded to each one. And honey, it was a lot, okay? It was a lot going on last month. So this is going to be part 2. The unfiltered version, the full story of how April tried to humble me repeatedly and what I did each time that it did, because it succeeded, I would say, a couple times, but you fall down, you get back up again. So let me take you back to where the domino effect started. I had an interview with a host in Sevilla back in March, and it went really well, and she loved our conversation, and she said she confirmed my future start date by the end of the week, either April 12th or April 17th, depending on when the current volunteer was leaving. So I felt good about this. Now, because I had the Sevilla plan locked for April in my head, I had been delaying 2 other hosts, one in Valencia and one in Conil de la Frontera. Both were waiting on me to confirm, and Conil especially needed me on very specific dates. So I was in that holding pattern of just wait until Sevilla comes energy. Then next thing you know, Friday, March 27th comes. I haven't heard back from her yet. I'm literally in transit from the Buddhist temple where I had just finished volunteering at in Ajoran Grande, heading to the Malaga city center. So I'm in transit. It's a lot of craziness right now. And actually, I was trying to select the best photos for this post. I realized I had a lot of great pictures of the temple, some of the inspiring people I met there, and I just decided that it's best that I dedicate a separate post on my experience there. So definitely stay tuned for more. In the Malaga city center, I had went there on one of my days off when I was working at the temple, and I had an idea to work out an arrangement with the previous host that I had volunteered with before, months ago, to stay and help there for 2 weeks before the April 12th start date. So I was really trying to make sure that my housing fees were non-existent, okay? And it sounds like everything was worked out. Yeah, no. So while I'm in transit, the Sevilla host messaged me, and the volunteer wants to extend their stay, so she no longer needs me for April. So she's like, can we talk about May instead? And I was just staring at my phone frustrated because this just ruined my plan. Now the Valencia plan didn't even make logistical sense anymore, because you don't go all the way back to Valencia and then double back to Sevilla unless you have a lot of financial income coming in, which is not where I was at this moment. And Conil's dates had already passed the window I could commit to. So basically, just like that, the plan I had been building everything around for April was gone. So I get to Malaga, I drop my stuff at the host place, I have lunch with a friend, and I'm generally feeling okay considering everything going on. All right, Sevilla fell through, but I have a plan B. I'm here, I'm settled, so let me just regroup. Then the host tells me he needs me to work that same night I arrived, which is 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And I'm like, okay, fine. I had my thoughts about that, but whatever. I show up, I do the shift. I'm at the front desk at 4 a.m., which if you've ever worked a late night shift, overnight shift, you already know that's when exhaustion really hits. It really sets in and you start counting down the minutes. And basically a guest comes down. He has bug bites and he proceeds to pull his sheets off. He would bring them to the hallway right by the front desk where I was, came back multiple times to discuss the situation in detail, and he was understandably upset, and I was too, okay, on his behalf and my behalf, because I'm I don't want nothing to do with that. And then he finally goes and lays down in the common kitchen area, but I was shook. I was like, oh no, So I was sitting there at 4 a.m. doing research on how to deal with this on my phone, because what else are you going to do? And I find that there were multiple complaints about bed bugs at this hostel dating all the way back to September 2025. And apparently there had been a fresh complaint that I see that the host responded to, like, I think a comment to under the review. And that was just the past Monday before I had came. So I know what you're thinking, like, why didn't you just leave right then? But I was just so exhausted. Like, to put it in perspective, I had already been up since 9 a.m., still running on the temple schedule where we volunteered from 9 to 5 daily, and they needed us out by like 10 or 11 or something like that, because they had a festival that was going to be starting and people were coming in. So I had been up since 9, and then I traveled an hour and a half to get to the city center. And, I went to lunch, whatever. And then this man threw me into an overnight shift the same day. So at this point, my brain wasn't fully functioning in problem-solving mode at 4 a.m. Survival mode was the best that I had. So when the host came to relieve me at 6 a.m., I told him what happened. He brushed it off, said maybe the guest brought them himself. I looked at him, I nodded, I was like, okay. And I went to sleep. And I knew that when I woke up, I was leaving, period. Like, I was like, I'm not even going to shower. Like, I'm just going to get myself up and I'm going to leave and shower at the next place. Because the host clearly wasn't taking it seriously, and it is a very serious thing that you should as a hostel, owner. Also, as a fun little tidbit, the volunteer that I had just met, he was a really cool guy from London. Shout out to him. He messaged me later that evening after I left and told me the host denied ever knowing about prior bedbug complaints, which is a lie because there's responses from him on several of them on booking.com. And he called me, and also the host called me dramatic. And I'm like, oh, dramatic. Okay, I can show you dramatic. No, I'm joking. Let me stop. I'm just joking. But I was like, funny how that works. Like, you notice the moment you assert a boundary, suddenly the person who was just praising how great and efficient you were finds a new way to frame you. But that's typical. That's another conversation for another day, where we talk about how people react when you stand up for yourself. Okay? Prime example. So I woke up, I had packed my stuff, and I had left at this point. So Malaga at night is so pretty, so I was taking photos on the way to the new hostel. And some of these photos are so beautiful, but what they don't show is that I waited 30 plus minutes for several different buses that I found out they weren't coming due to Semana Santa road closures. So I basically was taking the photos. I would walk to a bus stop, I'd get tired because I had all my luggage, and I was like, oh, that's a pretty castle, let me take a photo, let me breathe, woosah, and then we walk to another bus station. So you can imagine the frustration behind these photos. And then I had to finally catch an Uber with all my luggage, because I had to make check-in on time for the hostel that I had now booked for 2 nights. So basically, when you see these photos, you're like, ooh, just know that the scenic moments that I captured had a plot twist going on in the background. Another plot twist upon plot twist. And I also did message the host as soon as I woke up. I let him know I was leaving, and I gave him time to find a replacement for the next shift. He tried to invalidate my reasoning, of course. And really, I just realized that some situations don't require a joint agreement, especially when your health could be at risk. They just require you making a decision and you following through. So I made my way to the hostel, and ironically, this is the hostel that I had originally booked before I even worked out the arrangement with the bedbug Malaga host. So I got back to this hostel, and I really liked the interior. Really stepping into that hostel felt like exhaling for the first time in 24 hours, really, because I took a nice long shower, I ate, I sat with myself drinking some mint tea, and I cannot stress this enough. Decompressing in between chaotic changes is so important. Muy importante. Because even if for only a few minutes, your nervous system needs it. Like, in order to keep going, so your body doesn't collapse mentally, emotionally, physically, you need to give yourself some time, even if it's like writing in a journal, doing whatever you need to do to kind of get your mind back on track. So after doing that, I went ahead and opened my laptop. Because the reality of the situation hadn't changed, just because I removed myself from a bad one, I still needed somewhere else to be for April. I had no confirmed plan anymore. So I did what you do when everything falls through at the worst possible time. I just started mass applying to like different worldpackers listings. I was calculating what it would cost if I needed to pay for a hostel until I got the new Sevilla date. And that's difficult if you don't know what date. I didn't know at the time what date she would want me to start in May. So I was up until like 3 a.m. And look, I've done 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m. before. Actually, I find that I get a lot done creatively when I stay up later. I don't know if anybody else can relate. But there's a big difference between being up at 3 a.m. on a creative sprint, you know, writing, idea pumping, like fully in your element, and being up at 3 a.m. stressed about where you'll be staying for the next week. They are not the same energy, not even close. So let this be a warning. Traveling full-time, living the nomad life is not always glamorous. There are so many behind-the-scenes frustrations and things that happen outside of your control. You just have to learn to wing it and go with the flow, even when the current is heavy. And it ended up being just me, the laptop, booking.com, hostel world tabs, plus the glaring anxiety of figuring out before my 2 book nights that I've already paid for were finished. Then the next morning, a host in Alicante responded. So he needed someone immediately. I did the math, how much would it cost to stay at the hostel until May versus taking this opportunity and getting housed sooner rather than later. The overnight bus was the cheapest option, and it solved 2 problems at once. I wouldn't need to pay for another night at the hostel, and I arrived in Alicante ready to start. So I booked it, and I had a few hours to kill before heading to the bus station. So I just stayed at the hostel. I used the common areas, made some more tea. Okay, shout out to mint tea. Menta tea is so good. I tried to decompress a little bit more before the next chapter started, and then this is when I walked past the book exchange, and sitting there like it had been waiting especially for me was the book by Monica Berg called Fear is Not an Option. So I stood there for a second because I was like, is the universe talking to me? Because between the Sevilla cancellation, the bed bugs, the line host, the 3 a.m. application session, fear had been sneakily present throughout all of it, mixed with a layer of exhaustion and self-doubt. All of it whispering at once, like, are you sure about this? Is this still worth it? Maybe you should just go back home to the United States. And then that book title showed up at exactly the right moment and said what it said, like, fear is not an option. And I wrote about how I felt in that exact moment in full detail in part 1. I'll have it linked. But what I will say is that after seeing that title, writing the notes about how I was feeling, reading through my mini book of affirmations, I got on that overnight bus feeling slightly more grounded than I had any right to feel given everything that was going on. If you don't have like a mini book of affirmations, I genuinely recommend adding one to your combating negative thoughts arsenal. When life circumstances start going sideways and you need some self-love to help you reframe and keep going, it helps more than you think. Alicante, here I come, ready for a great experience, or so I thought. So I arrived in Alicante, and listen, the city itself is so beautiful, no complaints there. I'll have some pictures of like the bus station when I arrived there, some of the boardwalk. I'll show that in the video that I make for this. But the new host situation, that was a different story, because within the first week it became clear that it was not going to work. The energy was off from early on, like there was rude communication, micromanagement, and unclear structure for what was like expected of me as a volunteer. And I tried to adjust, y'all. I tried to show goodwill. I even gave him grace because I knew he was stressed. Like, he was preparing to leave for Portugal soon and trusting me with his space and to train another volunteer that was going to be coming when he wasn't here. But I made a promise to myself when I turned 30, now almost 2 years ago, birthday is next month, that I will not be people-pleasing or allowing continued disrespect in my life, no matter the connection, no matter the circumstance. And this host crossed the line when he used profanity at me. I was actually on the phone with my mom during the time when he did it, and I was like, oh, heck no, absolutely not. And I made the decision just like that. So after a week and during that exact moment when he tried it, okay, I actually surprised us both, and I made the decision to leave. Like, I think he was definitely surprised, and I was definitely surprised at myself. So I'm like, okay, because early 20s Brittany maybe wouldn't have handled it so quickly, swiftly like that. So I'm like, okay, I'm growing. Let me find out. I'm growing a little bit. Now, just side note really quickly. Leaving a worldpackers placement early is not a small thing because it affects your profile, your public reviews, which influences whether future hosts accept you. And because I've built a solid relationship with the worldpackers team over time, even earning like expert level status and a promo code, if you guys want to join, I will link the promo code or show it in the video. And I knew that I needed to reach out immediately to make sure this situation is under control. So I submitted a ticket, I explained the situation, and they adjusted my date so it wouldn't reflect poorly on my profile. And they reimbursed some of my extra hostel costs. We didn't fully agree on what the review should look like because I like being honest in my reviews. So I had to resubmit. But overall, they handled it, and that's what matters, which is why I really ride for worldpackers. So I left knowing I had done the right thing for me, even without knowing exactly where I was going next. Knowing your why and trusting the pivot and all of that, I gotta practice what I preach. So now here's where the story starts to turn for the better a little bit, un poquito. After leaving the Alicante host, I found myself bouncing between hostels for the remainder of April. Not ideal and certainly not the original plan, but somewhere in the middle of all of that bouncing around, I did find a gym. There was a hostel with the friendliest owners and staff I had encountered in such a long time, like free laundry, paella nights, mojito nights. Lord knows I needed those mojitos. It became my anchor for the weekdays because there were familiar faces, good energy, a place where I could exhale. Just remembering it kind of like makes me just want to take a deep breath in and out. Between the uncertainty and sorry, y'all, I lost my place because I was like trying to figure out everything. I wrote down everything that happened and I was trying to make sure. Okay. So the kind of place that reminds you that not everything on the road is hard. Some of it is genuinely beautiful if you let yourself receive it. Did I mention that they also had a sauna? Guests can use at no extra cost at any time of the day and night. Listen, I use that so much. After everything April threw at me, I sat in that sauna and just turned off my brain and I just sweat it all out. But the weekends were a different story because 3 weekends in a row, the hostel was fully booked out for private groups, so I had to find alternatives. The second weekend, a friend offered me a place to stay in a nearby town of Torrevieja. And what started out as a kind gesture turned into its own lesson because he repeatedly tried to negatively frame my choices. He was calling me boring for not drinking as much as he wanted me to match his energy. Now in my early 20s, I would have said why not and accepted another drink because it's socially acceptable. But as I said before, my 30s will be different, okay? Plus, the way my plans were changing by the day, I couldn't afford to be nursing a hangover when I might need my energy for another 3 a.m. research session. So he was also questioning my way of doing things, like wanting to research a few places to go out, saying I was overthinking, going on several bigging himself up speeches where he just talks about how he goes with life and he doesn't bother with the details. All as a slight against me because I do go with life, but I like details too. And that kind of subtle, like, undermining can get under your skin if you let it. Ironically, if he had taken the time to get to know me instead of projecting who he wanted me to be, he would know that I had literally been going with the flow all month, as you guys know. Heck, it's really been my journey for about several years now, during my Saturn return, getting laid off, and all the ups and downs of my life story. But with all that being said, I do love details. I like researching. I like finding fun things to do wherever I'm at. And I won't apologize for it because it's led to me having some amazing experiences and building some really great skills and hobbies like salsa dancing, all because I do a little research, you know? But I did not explain myself. I didn't seek his validation. I just stayed in my own center and I just kept it moving. After 2 nights there, obviously it wasn't going to work. So then that one Sunday night, I chose a jazz-inspired hostel, also in Torre Vieja, that gave you a robe and slippers at no extra cost. I wish I took more pictures of the interior of the place because it was decorated so well. But I was so exhausted dealing with another change, leaving that apartment unexpectedly and having to pay for a night where I thought I would have had the whole weekend covered. But yet another plot twist amongst plot twists. I don't know why I could not say that just now. I may need some water because I've been recording for a minute. So I'll show some pictures of what I was able to take while I was waiting for the reception, like some of the jazz pictures. But the contrast of the situations was not lost on me. Like, one experience was him trying to stifle me, and the next one is like snuggling me in a little robe, having me feeling good. Like Bruno Mars was singing Just the Way You Are directly in my ear. And if that wasn't enough, I ended up striking up a conversation with the restaurant owner nearby who not only spoke English fluently, but he had family from South Carolina, South Kakalaki, where I was born. Of all the towns, of all the restaurants, of all the people, usually y'all, when traveling, I meet people and they only know about New York, Miami, California. So it felt really good to know South Carolina was on someone's radar. That felt really good. Sometimes a pivot lands you somewhere better than where you were originally headed. Sometimes it lands you next to someone who shares a tiny piece of home you didn't know you needed, especially when traveling. You get a little homesick, not a lot, but every once in a while. So here I am, still in the thick of it, but maybe finally turning the tide. May is on the horizon. Well, it's now May that I'm reading this, but when I wrote it, May was on the horizon. And I have a new placement confirmed in Sevilla, where I'm at now. And yes, Sevilla is the city that started this whole domino effect. But it started on May 10th, and I know full circle moment doesn't even begin to cover it. Weeks of navigating the in-between, weeks of winging it, going with the flow, trusting that the next thing is already being arranged, even when I can't see it yet. Will I collapse under the pressure? Honestly, some days it feels close, because it wasn't just the travel chaos. In the middle of all of this, I got selected for a part-time role at a company centered around one of my greatest interests, which is astrology. So I got approved for the first round and completed a full assignment of mark work for them. That got approved, and then I made it to the second round interview, and then a few days before sitting down to write this, I found out I didn't get it, and I was just like, oh my gosh. That stung. I had already started mentally calculating how that income would help me stabilize 20 hours a week doing things that I genuinely enjoy, like engaging with the audience, creating content, talking about astrology. It felt like it was made for me, but, onwards and upwards. Like I told my mom when I was, expressing my disappointment to her about it, I was like, if it was the right opportunity, it would have happened. And I just have to remember that anytime I had experienced a letdown or disappointment. Also, subscribe to Growth Inspired Tribe for reflections on inner work, aligned living, and designing life on your terms. That's my Substack, and I will make sure to link this so that you can do it if you're interested. And just know that the financial uncertainty was real. The living instability is real. And I'm honestly ready to move past. this era in my life into a more stable home base while I continue to travel. But that's the next step on a journey, or so I hope. Let's see what the universe has in store for me. I'm crossing my fingers. Buena suerte para mí. Good luck for me. The year. Wow, I must be getting tired. It must be time for me to go on my walk, y'all. I'm almost done though. Thanks for sticking with me. The fear that I'm doing something wrong by choosing a different path than what my family has at my age still shows up uninvited. You already know that from part 1 and from other posts. But here's what